Hello and welcome to 5-Year Club video number 99. And make sure I get my volume up here. There we go, now I can hear the microphone. Video number 99, fuzzy issues around financial independence. Several different threads reminded me of this issue, so I thought I would cover it. And specifically what it is when are you financially independent? When are you retired? And let's explore some variations around that. Let's explore some boundary conditions. Are you financially independent when your net worth exceeds 25 times your annual spending? Well, not exactly, because, for example, if your net worth was entirely in a piece of real estate and that real estate had a market value that was 25 times your annual spending, then if you sold it, you would need to pay some taxes on it probably, and you'd also need to pay realtor fees and any other closing costs for that transaction. And after the sale, you would have less than 25 times your annual spending to invest, and therefore you would not meet the 4% withdrawal rate that we've talked about before as a safe withdrawal rate on your investments to have your nest egg exist as long as you're still alive. Let's look at a different case. Are you financially independent when your passive income cash flow exceeds your spending cash flow? I think this is a better definition of financial independence. It's still a little bit vague though, because a passive income could be a disability payment, or a passive income could be, maybe somehow you got a very high rental income from a property that was a very low value. And so if you lose that tenant, nobody else is willing to pay that much, and then you would need to go find some money. So it's not a perfect definition, but it's probably the best definition that we're ever going to get. Because in the situation where your passive cash flows are exceeding your spending cash flow, it means that your assets are already in place to check all of your boxes. And that's the whole point of having 25 times your annual spending invested, is to generate the cash flow. If you could do it another way, maybe you should. Are you financially independent when you could, in theory, sell all your stuff and have more than 25 times your annual spending? Maybe. I think it really depends on what the numbers are. If someone has a $20 million gold bar sitting in their closet, am I going to say that they are not financially independent? Well, they could at least sell it for $10 million. So, if they are living their life as if they are financially independent, in other words, doing what they want to do with their life, regardless of whether they're getting the cash flow from their gold bar, the cash flow. I gotta reuse that. You need a good cash flow. Yeah, regardless of whether they're getting cash flow from a gold bar, which you can't really do, $10 million potential sale seems like a solid reason for a person to believe that they're financially independent to me. And finally, are you retired? And see, I changed this from financially independent retired because now I'm going to talk about working. Are you retired when you have 25 times spending invested and stop working a full-time job? And once again, 4%, 3.5% rule aside, when we're talking about retirement or whether we're talking about financial independence, why do we care so much whether a person is working? I think it's less about whether the person is working versus whether the person needs to work to pay their bills and would not be able to pay them otherwise. Anyhow, I reached this point in the analysis, and I think that instead of continuing, I'm going to read an article by Mr. Money Mustache because I think that he puts it very well. And in a lot of ways, he's more popular than me and he has a more authoritative voice. Let's go look at this. Mr. Money Mustache versus the Internet Retirement Police. These are real people. I have seen them again and again, and seeing them come out reminded me of this concept and inspired this video today. Video number 99. Insane. He's not really retired. It says right in the blog that he does construction work. Also, he manages his own rental houses and has a blog. That doesn't sound like retirement to me. That brief history of the stash stuff doesn't add up to me. I think he's making it all up. I've had people accuse me of making things up too. Yes, he has a nice nest egg, but I suspect he'll be working for a good part of the year. Who the fuck, you may ask, are these people? That's what I asked more than a year ago, when first alerted to the presence of a large number of people who I have never met, who were carefully and yet completely inaccurately speculating about the life and times of Mr. Money Mustache. Lucky for me, the answer came immediately in this brilliant poem/comment that Jacob from Early Retirement Extreme posted on this blog. I like Jacob a lot. We'll talk a little bit more about him later. The Internet Retirement Police, IRP, which you'll meet in various online forums, have established 5 main directives. In principle, you can only participate in certain pre-approved retirement activities, such as beach sitting, staring out the window, and receiving visits from your grandchildren. Traveling is also okay, as is eating delicious food. Just make sure you don't cook it yourself. See below. Think twice before doing anything that's not on this list. The IRP is watching you. The IRP does grant one exemption should you become bored with the activities above. You can work for a non-profit organization. Make sure you're not getting paid, though, even if you have to plead your case with the CEO to put in special exemptions. Accepting money obviously means you didn't do your retirement math and that you ran out of money in a couple of years after retiring. After all, what other obvious explanation could there be, besides the obvious ones? If you can't find a way to work without pay, it's best to head back to the beach towel and just sit on that. I put a just in there. Just to be clear, you're most definitely not allowed to be a kayak instructor in your retirement. While that may sound like a fun job that you picked for yourself, even if you didn't have to, the key word is job. You can, however, spend a Saturday morning dressed up as an elephant handing out flyers and free lemonade at the entrance. And if you really must instruct in kayaking, please avoid doing something more engaging than blogging about kayaks. And if you do blog, try not to make the blog popular, because then the blog would be a job. Next, I feel like I should warn Mr. Money Mustache readers lest they stumble into the retirement pitfall of saving money by living frugally. You can't do that. According to the Internet Retirement Police, saving money is a full-time job, and try to follow this. Since you can't have a job and be retired, you are not allowed to save money in retirement. You see, if you save money by doing your own cooking, you're now working as a cook, thus no longer retired. The Internet Retirement Police would like you to take this to the extreme logical conclusions. For example, you're working as a money manager if you handle your own investments. You're working as a gardener if you mow your own lawn. You're working as a chauffeur if you don't hire a driver. You're a pro blogger if you have a blog, and so on. Disclaimer: all examples are taken from real-world cases as presented to me by the Internet Retirement Police. They're not kidding. That is Jacob from earlyretirementextreme.com. I love his website. I've read at least part of his book. And there's something I want to say about him, but that can wait for now. Jacob wrote that comment hastily in the discussion section of First Retire, Then Get Rich, but I immediately tweeted out a link to it, sending a warning shot across the bow of the Early Retirement Police boat. And now, at long last, we are going to sink it for good. At issue right now is the definition of retirement. You're not retired. You admit to doing an awful lot of carpentry. If I can somehow suppress my urge to build things and sit inside, then I will be retired? What about if I work only on my house? Retired or not? You're not retired if you have a rental house. If the tenants never call me for anything, as has been the case for the past 2 years, then am I retired? Or if I sell my rental house and transfer the money to a REIT, that is a real estate investment trust, which offers equal yield, can I be retired then? What if this is less fun? What if I subsequently do a bunch of research on REIT funds and allocate my investment across several rebalancing occasionally? You're not retired if you have a blog that makes money, even if it's about early retirement. If I take down the remaining ads, then can I be retired? Or is the work involved the issue? Would I be retired if I had a robot that wrote the blog for me, but I collected the revenue? Or what if I still did the writing, but I did it only while sitting on the beach while being fed intravenously? Would I be more retired than if I wrote it from my couch at home as I do now? It's a shame we don't have a better name for all this stuff we're doing as mustachians. Retirement doesn't sound right. Financial independence comes closer. Can we invent a new word for it? How about removed? Newsflash, the perfect word has already been invented. Are you ready to hear it? Here it is. Retired! It's perfect just as it is. It's just like financially independent, but it sounds more amazing and it uses 75% fewer syllables. Retired means you no longer have to work for money, and you are aware of this fact. You can then proceed to do whatever you want as long as you do it consciously and of your own accord. If you meet this condition and you feel retired, congratulations, you are. Retired probably does not mean you sit at home watching TV, venturing out only for medication or motorized cart-aided round of golf, or a motorized cart-aided round of golf. This is a subset of retirement, but only a very special case of it for those with very advanced age or limited mobility. Retired means different things to different people, but one of the rules of mustachianism is that if someone tells you they are retired, you do not question them, you congratulate them. Retirement may or may not include any of the following lifestyle attributes: the complete abandonment of alarm clocks and a soft chuckle specially developed for anyone who tries to make you be somewhere before 9 a.m., a general lack of awareness of what day of the week it is, a work ethic that ebbs and flows with your natural human cycle. There may be times of extreme productivity and late nights, and other times of dormancy. Work and areas of interest that change over the years, some of which might earn you money, and some of which might be neutral or even spending instead of earning money. Or it can be completely different. The only rule is that you theoretically must have sufficient savings or other assets, that you could live indefinitely off of the passive income they provide, and these savings must give you the freedom to realize that any work you do is totally optional. You don't actually have to live off the income, it just has to be there. So there it is, the official definition of retirement, of which early retirement is just a special case. Why does Mr. Money Mustache get to define it? Because I have the biggest early retirement blog. If the Internet Retirement Police would like to supersede my definition, they will have to start their own blog, calling it something like www.mrmoneymustacheisnotreallyretired.com. Build it up to be more widely spread than this one, and then propose their own definition. Only at this point would the torch be passed, and the definition of retired would be up for discussion. Thousands of the mustachians who read this blog are already retired. Most of them still do some sort of work, and all of them have fists brandished in case the Internet Retirement Police dare to show their faces around the internet again. All right. as I don't know if you've noticed this, but my lovely cat, see, she's like a thoroughbred stallion cat, has decided to join us. Oh, she has no respect. So that's a very nice article by Mr. Money Mustache. And I will now take this opportunity, pet my cat a few more times. I like you, Mari. All right, let's go, cat. Oh, I got work to do. Don't steal my cord. All right. Let's talk about Mr. Jacob Lund Fisk of Early Retirement Extreme. I'm not sure that I have... not sure I've talked about him before. This is his website, Early Retirement Extreme. He is a PhD in physics, I believe, from Denmark or something like that. Maybe nuclear physics. I don't know. And Jacob Lund Fisk, I highly recommend him. I think you should read all of his stuff. I think you should read his book. He claimed to be financially independent when he had $175,000. And the reason why he claimed that is because he had gotten his annual spending down to $7,000. And I believe at that point, his annual spending had been at $7,000 for 2 years in a row. This is the type of guy who will post a blog entry when he creates a $4 rake. And you look at that and you're like, wow, you are really proud of that $4 rake. And he will brag and say, this $4 rake is at least 80% less expensive than a rake if I bought it from the store. And that is why his blog, I guess, is called Early Retirement Extreme. And so if you take $7,000 and multiply it times 25, I believe you will find that it equals $175,000. So by the 4% rule, Mr. Jacob Lund Fisk is retired. However, I would like to point out that if you are advanced in age and having health problems, or if you simply have 40 years ahead of you until you are advanced in age, there is a high statistical probability that some shit's going to go down. And there's also, I think, a substantial probability that $175,000 is not enough to cover these events that are statistically unlikely in 1 year and statistically likely in, say, like 40 years. And because of that, I would not recommend anyone follow the philosophy that if you can get your spending down to $7,000 a year, you should stop earning money and stop investing after you reach $175,000. Certainly, Jacob Fisk did not do that. He has worked sometimes. He has not worked sometimes. I don't doubt that he continues to be incredibly frugal, because I think that is a kind of a spiritual personality thing when you get to that point. And he seemed very, very happy at his $7,000 a year spending rate. I believe that his net worth now is something closer to $900,000. And $900,000 when your spending is still, somewhere around $7,000. I don't know if he's at $7,000 now, but perhaps $10,000. I know that he embraces this low spending philosophy. $900,000 and $10,000 spent per year. I can't argue with that. He's shown the results. But I did want to discuss that because I think it's important to put a kind of a caveat on his particular angle on financial independence, even if I greatly respect the man and I think everyone should go and read his blog and read his book, because I think he has a lot of excellent ideas. All right, that is Mr. Money Mustache's view on the definition of retirement. I like it. I think in my view, I've talked about saying financial independence instead of retirement, and that's primarily because I think a lot of people come to the table with a preconceived notion of retirement. But I can see how once you have enough investments that you are convinced that you don't need to work your job anymore and you stop working your job, then you're like, well, I really don't care what word you use to describe what I'm doing because I have freedom. What's your deal? All right. And the second part of video number 99, I want to talk about what is the right way to phrase this? There's been a lot of discussion, I think, as far as privilege goes, and there will continue to be, because privilege is a very popular concept in the media right now. And I'd like to read this article because it's something that someone linked to when they were talking about the necessity of discussing privilege when discussing early retirement. And I'd like to give my commentary on kind of what I think of this article. And I chose this article because I respect the author. Not because I agree with the author, but I respect the author. What FIRE bloggers owe readers. Nothing at all. A blogging manifesto. I love the financial independence / early retirement blogging community fiercely, and I'm proud to be a part of what is unquestionably one of the most positive, supportive places on the internet. Hear, hear, that is absolutely true. And if you are not currently hooked into the financial independence community on the internet and you are hoping to grow wealth, you need to get hooked up into it, because it will not only educate you but also inspire you to save more and to do better financially. I didn't even really read financial independence blogs before we got started on our journey, or before I started blogging for that matter, but I've still gotten so much from them and from the community of readers who comment and share thoughts too. For those of us interested in living a particular kind of unconventional life made possible by the subtraction of work, financial independence blogs serve a crucial purpose, absolutely. And that crucial purpose is why it's so critical that we always tell the full story. I think that's up for debate. Because, kind of like achieving a purpose and telling what you believe to be an accurate full story, not the same thing. Let's continue. Last year, I wrote my feistiest post to date, possibly ever, depends on how this one goes, in which I encourage readers not to listen to financial independence blogs, especially when it comes to the question of whether early retirement is sustainable. Because too often they don't tell the full story. Bottom line, nearly every retired financial independence blogger draws significant income from their blog and therefore isn't actually testing the approach to early retirement that they espouse. And this is the blog post she's talking about that she wrote earlier. I read a little bit of it. And let's go back here. The paradox of the successful blogger, blah, blah, blah. Don't listen to us. Blogs don't tell the full financial independence story. And we don't need to read this. I'll link to it in the description. Let's go back. All right, now what I'd like to say is, so nearly every financial independence blogger draws significant income from their blog and therefore isn't actually testing the approach to early retirement that they espouse. And I would like to say that it is not a blogger's responsibility to test their approach. It is a reader's responsibility to evaluate the approach for themselves. If the blogger wants to be credible, they need to cite some compelling evidence. I think that when it comes to something like the 4% rule, that's a rule that takes more than a decade, statistically, to figure out if it's even working for the time period that you're in. And again, more than a decade. So for a financial independence blogger to be testing the 4% rule, are they going to wait 15 years before they report to readers on their first blog post whether this thing is working out? That I don't believe that. I think that people should write what they want, and readers should read what they want, and readers should use their brains to evaluate what they are reading. That post started some great discussions, and I was pleased to see a few more bloggers disclose their blog income as a result, but that alone isn't enough. So today I'm going further. This is a manifesto of what fire bloggers owe our readers. Absolutely nothing. We are at our best as a community when we push each other to be better. Better by what definition? I mean, is better being more inspiring for people to save money? Or is better being more truthful according to this author's definition of truthful? And this is my big nudge to all of us, including to myself. What fire bloggers owe readers, a blog manifesto. Manifesto! The predicament I see with financial independence blogs is, interestingly, that many are too encouraging. This may be the one and only time I ever complain about a group of people being too positive, but the fundamental conflict is that if we make early retirement seem too easy to achieve or too simple mathematically, we lead folks down the primrose path to potential financial ruin later in life at exactly the time when they are least equipped to deal with it. Thank you, Alexa. Because they simply did not save enough to weather all the future unknowns that none of us can control. We need to be both encouraging and realistic, and sometimes full realism is what's missing. Okay, let's discuss this for a moment. The danger this author cites is that financial independence bloggers will lead folks down a primrose path of saving up a nest egg that is 25 times their annual spending. And that by doing that, they will lead someone down a path of financial ruin later in life at exactly the time when they are least equipped to deal with it, because they simply did not save enough to weather all the future unknowns. I gotta say, if I've discussed this before, but if you look at retirement statistics in America, very, very few people save 25 times their annual spending for retirement. Period. At any point in their life, they do not save that. And therefore, I think this author's concern that someone who saves 25 times their annual spending will somehow be on a path to ruin is absolutely batshit crazy absurd. Because it would be like my fantasy dream if I could get even half of Americans to save up 25 times their annual spending. That would be freaking amazing. And so I don't understand where this person is coming from. For sure, there is a debate about whether 25 times is enough. Perhaps it's not. Perhaps 33 times would be enough. In the context, though, of the early retirement community, as it turns out, if you save up 25 times your annual spending, and it turns out you were wrong, and you need 33 times your annual spending again, well, you just got a little bit more to go, and you're already really good at saving money, and you're already really good at earning money. So I'm not worried about you. If you get to 25 times your annual spending and saving early, and let's say that early is defined by anything before 40, or 50 for that matter, I'll even take 60, who cares? You will definitely have the tools in your toolbox to put away some more money and get higher than 25 times your annual spending. So from the outset of this article, I think the concern of the author is a non-issue. She's concerned about a fantasy of mine, frankly. Problem 1, the plan versus reality mismatch and the incomplete message that creates. Let me make this completely clear. I do not think that making money from your blog is the problem here. I know how much work it is to write a blog and keep it going, and I believe people deserve to be compensated for their work. So if you make your money on your blog, great job. The problem is that what folks espouse and then what they actually do are often quite different, and that creates a real and important issue in the message. Let's break that down. Consider the most commonly discussed levels of financial independence or early retirement. Major early retirement models: save enough for a mini retirement, save enough to semi-retire, save enough to never work again. While bloggers may have different approaches to getting to financial independence, the model of post-career life that most espouse is this one: save enough for a mini retirement, save enough to semi-retire, or save enough to never work again. No inherent problem here, right? Never having to work ever again is what we all want in an ideal world, right? Well, let's look at this. Let's look at this statement for a second. Never having to work ever again. What does that mean? What is work? If I could get paid to fart, and I know I'm going to fart anyway, is the farting like work if I accept the money, but not work if I don't? Like, what is the definition of work here? Is work anything you do to receive money, even if you love doing it? Or is work things that you do to receive money that you hate, that you don't enjoy? And the only working people today are people who hate their lives. A little bit of ambiguity there. Here's the problem. They write about mini retirement, still make money, never work again, when what they actually do is mini retirement, they still make money instead of never work again. Or to put it more simply, they are selling no more work, but they are living work and more money. It's understandable if you spend all these years working a high-stress job, thinking you never want to work again, and then go to retirement and realize there are actually certain types of work that you wouldn't mind doing. Hi, we did it. Or your blog grows because you achieve financial independence and become a big inspiration to people and realize that you can make big bucks from it. All well and good. But imagine this scenario. All right, so now we're imagining a theoretical scenario. A blogger who needs retirement cash flow of $40,000 a year saves $1 million and leaves their career. Great. They quickly begin netting $50,000 a year from their blog, and now instead of withdrawing $40,000 a year from their portfolio and actually testing the 4% rule they espouse in their post, again, how long is it going to take? 15 years to actually do a test on this? Because the yearly volatility of the stock market is such that in 1 or 2 years, you would not have any kind of reasonable test of the 4% rule with that much data. They are now not withdrawing anything and are instead reinvesting dividends and even adding $10,000 more to their portfolio on top of marketing gains. In no time, their portfolio balance hits $1.1 million and then $1.2 million and beyond. Should the blogger's blog income ever disappear and force them to default back to their original withdrawal plan, they'll now only be withdrawing 3.3% of their portfolio every year, not 4%. If the economy tanks, they can sustain a 17% correction before they're even back at their base level. Back at the base level, they need to be completely financially independent forever. Or maybe they have a $200,000 cushion on top of their financial independence fund to weather things like higher future health care expenses or a home purchase if they decide to move somewhere higher cost. The question is, if this person keeps blogging about the likelihood that the 4% rule will be adequately conservative in their future, or whether an economic crisis would sink their finances, or about why enough is a lot less than you think and you should stop working already, or whether we should all be more confident about our early retirement money working out just fine, should we trust that? Well, that is a question for the reader. There is an unstated social contract at play in the FIRE blogosphere between writer and reader, which says, you can trust what I'm telling you and incorporate my ideas safely into your own retirement plan because I'm actually doing this myself and betting my own finances on it. And I am not really confident that that contract is in place. I don't trust anybody. I think people need to actively think about everything that they read. And, I think it's helpful if bloggers say, like, yeah, I'm making income from this. When a blogger talks about the 4% rule, generally they say, hey, look at the Trinity study. And a reader can go and read the Trinity study for themselves, and they can decide if the time period covered by the Trinity study is likely to match the time period of their own life. But, I gotta say, look, even if a blogger did test the 4% rule over, say, 20 or 30 years and it worked out for them, that doesn't mean that it's going to work out for the following 20 or 30 years. The world changes. Things change. And so a reader, in any case, is going to need to evaluate for themselves with all kinds of different evidence, not just from one blogger, from many different sources, what's going on. And that's the reality. Problem 2, ignoring the reality for many readers. I appreciate the lengths that so many bloggers go to make readers of all stripes feel welcome here. It's why I write posts like how I started with essentially nothing saved only 10 years before retiring early. And I've heard from enough readers to know that inclusive spirit is absolutely a positive thing. But there's a dark side to that. To be inclusive, we often have to act as though the things we say apply to everyone, and that's just not true. Well, it's not true for anyone who believes it's not true. Looking at income breakdowns in the US, for example, most people simply cannot save for early retirement in 10 or 15 years without spending so little that it's below the poverty level, an impossible reality in the age of housing shortages, massive student debt, skyrocketing healthcare costs, and wage stagnation. This writer is making the classic mistake of equating statistics with people. Statistics are not people. If you tell me something like, Lewis, can you write a blog post that will cause all of the people in this income group to change their life and save a bunch of money and succeed? Of course, I can't. Nobody can. I'm lucky if I even change this statistic by 1%. I would be a notable person if I could even change that statistic by 1%. However, when it comes to individuals, it's just not true. Individuals have the power to make big changes for themselves that are statistically abnormal. If you want to change your life and get the hell out of the statistic that you're in, you have the ability to do it. But you've got to be fucking weird. If you're fucking weird enough, then you're going to do things that are outside the statistics. You're going to do things that are, by virtue of being unusual, in other words, statistically anomalous, low likelihood that you would do it, but you chose to do it, you are going to be able to make much bigger changes in your life than all of these people who are going to stay within the statistically normal range of behaviors. And that's what I believe in. I believe that if people are willing to do crazy, weird things like make a video every freaking day for 2018 to talk about personal finance, then they can make big changes in their life. My savings rate for April is probably going to be greater than 90%. That's freaking insane. I would not have been able to fathom that back in 2014 when I decided, I really have to move this boat. I really have to change things. But I have been really weird about this for I guess over 4 years now. And that's the position I find myself in. And it's true. So I believe other people can do it. Sure, some people can save in that time frame or more quickly, but they are not the norm, and that is exactly the point. They are not the norm. The norm is not listening to financial independence or early retirement community videos, podcasts, reading blog posts. The norm is sitting in front of the TV. So when we say anyone can do this, that's a different thing. Anyone can do this or anyone will do this. Very different thing. I think anyone can do this. Will anyone... Well, I don't say anyone can do this. There are some people with neurological problems. I'm sorry. I don't think they're going to be able to do it. For people who are not crippled by that kind of thing, do I believe anyone can do it? Yes. Do I believe anyone will do it? Do I believe anyone will choose to spend their life that way? No. They obviously won't. We know that from experience. So when we say anyone can do this, or start throwing out big numbers or percentages that are clearly out of the mathematical realm of possibility for the majority of people in one of the wealthiest countries on earth, we're actually excluding with our attempts to be inclusive, or worse, we're actually excluding with our attempts to be inclusive, or worse, we're shaming those who can't save at those levels for being less capable or dedicated. I don't think that you can determine mathematically what someone's life is going to be like. You can determine mathematically perhaps what this month's budget will be like, but even that's up for debate. You know, there are things you can do. There are people you can talk to make things happen. I was reading about a tech investor, about his background. Turns out his background was that he moved to the United States from Iran, and he began working at a carpet store in Palo Alto, selling carpets to people who lived in Palo Alto. Well, many of the people who live in Palo Alto, they're tech people, and some of those people are wealthy tech investors. And simply through talking to his customers at the carpet store, he discovered the tech investment community, and he decided to start having tech investment kind of get-togethers at the carpet store. And he began networking with these people. And he was able to find opportunity to invest in some things by knowing this network of wealthy tech people. But he didn't know anything about tech at first. He had just gotten lucky and become a carpet salesman at the right location. And, you know, the ability to reach out to people and say, hey, would you like to get a beer with these other 5 customers that I know? You didn't have to do that. It's kind of a weird thing. You went out on a limb to do it. But you did it, and it has nothing to do with math, and it made a big difference in this guy's life. And so when I read this, I don't believe her. And I certainly don't believe that by talking to people about the advantages of saving and the importance of saving that I'm shaming anyone. But, you know, if someone wants to feel shamed when they listen to one of the things, I guess they can. I figured out a long time ago that we can't let other people determine our attitude towards life, and we can't let other people determine the way emotionally that we approach life. It's up to us how we interpret things. It's up to us the story that we tell ourselves about what's going on. And I hold myself to that standard, and I have to hold other people to that standard too. I don't believe that the answer is to be less inclusive. I'm not even sure what inclusive means in this context, but simply to acknowledge a much wider range of economic realities. And if you aren't sure what those realities are, keep reading. I think we, as a community of financial independence bloggers, are already doing a great job on the encouragement side, and that won't change, nor should it. So the encouragement part isn't represented here in the manifesto. Where we're lacking is on the realism side, both our own as bloggers and potential future problems readers could face, and that's where we can and must do better collectively. That's true for both the big influential blogs and the small blogs too, because they could be the influential blogs tomorrow. The manifesto, what fire bloggers owe our readers. Be transparent about whether you're testing your own plans. If we write about the 4% rule and take an approach to saving that embraces more risk, then we need to be living the 4% rule and not continuing to pad our investments. That is freaking absurd. That is ridiculous. And not continuing to pad our investments? You can't say that the 4% rule is like a legitimate thing if you're also saving money? That's crazy. Or if we find ourselves unexpectedly making good money in retirement, we need to be clear with our readers that our plan has changed. What your independence has changed because your independent business is doing well? That's crazy. And we're no longer doing what we said we do with respect to our finances. What? Okay, share the parameters of your own financial independence. Not all financial independence is created equal. To one person, financial independence might mean that if you never work again, you won't be comfortable, but you won't starve. While to someone else, financial independence might mean being able to live large forever. Readers deserve to know what standard of living is built into your definition of financial independence, whether it covers only you or you plus a spouse or family, whether it relies on living in a particular place, like a low cost of living area or overseas, and whether you're factoring some future work into your numbers or not. And I have to say, I think this is kind of a non-issue. I think the popular bloggers that I read, Financial Samurai, Mr. Money Mustache, Jacob Lund-Fisker, they're all pretty transparent about what they're living on and what they consider financial independence and if they're earning money or not. So, yeah, I'm not worried about that. Acknowledge if you have a high income. I get that high income means something different to everyone, and that if your income matches those around you, it's not going to feel high. But I see way too many bloggers saying anyone could do this or characterizing their own situation as normal, average, or the massively misused term middle class when it's clearly not. And that both misrepresents the truth and alienates readers who can see through it. I don't trust readers seeing through anything. That's why they're reading the blog and not writing it. But let's take the ambiguity away from what high income means. Here are some facts. The 50th percentile of household income in the U.S., per the 2014 census data, is $57,000 per year. That's with an average of 1.41 earners, meaning the individual average is just above $40,000 a year. So if your household earns above these figures, you already earn more than average. If your household earns above $80,000 a year, you're paid in the top third of all households above $100,000. You're in the top quarter. $160,000 puts you in the top 10%. $200,000 is the top 5%, and $250,000 or more is the top 3%. That's household, not just one person in a dual income home. Even earning top quarter, $100,000 plus for the household, puts you well above average and about double what most households earn, so is going to materially impact what you're able to do financially and the rate at which you can save and invest. Duh, that's math. That's why you must say so. Okay. Well, again, I believe that readers need to evaluate this for themselves, and if you're reading an early retirement blog that's not talking about the math, it's not talking about kind of what needs to be earned, what needs to be saved, and what standard of living you're going to be living at and what you're going to be spending afterwards, that's a very shallow blog, and I'm not sure that many of those exist. Most of the stuff that I read is very specific about numbers, perhaps even too specific, because they are so easy to put into Excel and so easy to fill up a blog post with. It also means that you earn six figures as a household, that if you earn six figures as a household, you're, by the most generous possible definition of middle class, as the middle is half of everyone, not... Okay. Possible definition of middle class as the middle half of everyone, not middle class. To say you are is untrue. Okay, well, I don't think that's true. I think the middle class definition is very flexible. And if you're in the top 10% or higher, then you absolutely need to clarify that what you're doing is going to be out of reach for the vast majority of folks. That is freaking crazy. And if you're in the top 10% or higher, then you absolutely need to clarify that what you're doing is going to be out of reach for the vast majority of folks. I don't believe that at all. As I've told people before, the more that you push yourself on income, the more that you push yourself on net worth, it goes exponentially. And I 100% believe that. It does not go linearly. It goes exponentially. Certainly in the beginning, it is flat and you don't see that much progress, but once the progress begins building, it begins building. As you get raises and as you go up career steps to the next job above you, that next job above you is not going to be $10,000 increase every time. It's going to be 10% increase every time. Now, obviously, if you're at $30,000, then you're going to be going from 30,000 to 33, and that's not a very exciting gain. But if you're at, say, $200,000, then the next step would be to 20. And $20,000 of gain is certainly more exciting than $3,000 of gain. And I simply disagree with this author about this point. I believe that so many people are just kind of on autopilot when it comes to work, especially after they get out of their 20s, that if you are one of the few people who is paying attention and who is being organized and planning and talking to people about it and diligently trying to move your career forward, pursuing more education on the nights, pursuing more education on the weekend, then you can definitely get into the top 10% of earners. The top 1%? I don't know. Nationally speaking, I'm not there yet. I hope to be there someday. I think I will be there someday. But I disagree with the author. I don't think that it's necessary for anybody to tell the vast majority of people that achieving the top 10% is probably out of reach. That's unnecessarily pessimistic. I've always acknowledged that we earn well above average, but I can do better and owe readers that by telling them that they can't do what I've done. Our lightning fast saving for early retirement was absolutely aided by having a household income in our final savings years that was in the top 3% along with not having kids. It's important to talk about kids. Kids can cost money, but they don't need to cost a ton of money. It wasn't always there, of course, but when it was in lower brackets, we saved more slowly. Sure, that's math. Tell readers if you're working. This one doesn't need elaboration, but of course it needs elaboration because you would want to tell them how much you're earning. But it's important for readers to know if you're still drawing an active income. I'm not sure that it is. Certainly, I think if you gave your net worth and you gave your spending numbers or some kind of ratio between them, then that would be important. But I'm not sure what purpose it serves beyond those two numbers to tell people that you're still getting a paycheck from somebody else. And as two people who telecommuted for years, I can absolutely affirm that just because you're doing it from home, it doesn't mean it's not real work. Again, this person's definition of work is kind of fuzzy. If you left the office but are otherwise doing your job, it's still work. Be clear about the limits of good intentions. We can talk all day about how important it is to be flexible, but how flexible can you be if you're 75, you haven't worked in 3 decades, the cost of Medicare has tripled so that healthcare is now your largest expense, and you just found out you have stage 3 cancer? Is that when you're going to just go back to work? Of course, we all must stay on top of our spending in early retirement and traditional retirement and constrain it if the markets start tanking, but we owe it to readers to remind them that flexibility and frugality have their limits, and sometimes the only answer is to save a bit more or build in more contingencies. That's a little bit of a vague paragraph. It starts with kind of talking about good intentions, and then it ends with saving a bit more. No doubt, like 4% rule. If someone says, I don't like the 4% rule, maybe I want the 3.5% rule. Okay. Personally, I guess my perspective on it is like, okay, if you did the 4% rule and then you were like, okay, I can start working on my own project now. And for me personally, that project needs to be a business someday. And for the business to stay alive beyond my death, it needs to earn money. So by extension, I will likely earn money from that business. And so I will be earning money even when I hit the 4% rule. I think that, 4% versus 3.5%, it's a fair discussion to have in this community. I think that there is a component of financial independence and talking about money in general that is beyond the numbers. And that is when you're discussing finances, not financial independence, when you're simply talking to people about managing what money they have or what income they have better than they currently are. And I've done this before. And you're talking to somebody, say, who is 75 and they haven't worked and medical expenses have increased significantly and they've got stage 3 cancer. What's your plan? Talking to them. Is your plan to tell them like, hey, you're old and you got cancer, you're fucked? Is that your plan? Is that the right thing to do in that situation? Is that going to inspire the person? Is that going to make the person feel better about anything? Or are you going to say like, we just have to keep looking for opportunity? And here's the thing. You don't know if that person is going to get opportunity or not. All kinds of crazy things happen. You can statistically say, I don't think that there's going to be opportunity. But I got to say for myself, if I was 75 and I've got stage 3 cancer and medical costs are getting expensive, I want someone to tell me that there's hope. I want to be thinking positive till the very end. Because the alternative appears to be thinking that I'm fucked until the end. And I don't want to go out that way. And that's just like my, when I hope that I am the guy where like they put me in the ground and then my hand goes, bah, out of the coffin. And then I die my final gasp, like trying to get out one last time. I like being alive. I like continuing to move and continuing to go. And I don't think it's helpful to tell people who are trying to improve financially, even if they are older, even if they don't have good job prospects. I don't think it's helpful to say like, yeah, you're pretty screwed. Can't do anything for you. Bye. Not so good. Drop the health arrogance and the ableist bias. This is going to sound harsh, but many bloggers are either blind to this or are deliberately choosing to see themselves as better than others simply because they are currently healthy. And hey, lucky you, there is a lot we can do to improve our chances of staying healthy over the long run. And if you aren't focused on staying active and eating healthily, I think you're doing it wrong. But to say to your blog readers that you can control the cost of health by making healthy choices is straight up lying to them. First, none of us can control the cost of healthcare, and health insurance alone is currently going up in many states by 20% a year. Well, even if health insurance is going up in cost, that doesn't mean that we are powerless to take action to get the most efficient healthcare that we possibly can. So that's worth mentioning. That's about 7 times the rate of overall inflation each year. And that's before the expected cuts to Medicare arrive, even though the average Medicare recipient already has to pay more than $250,000 out of pocket on healthcare between when they get on Medicare and the end of life. But more importantly, anyone can get sick at any time, even the healthiest people. Or you could get hit by a car and need massively expensive surgeries and hospitalization. We can and should do everything we can to improve our odds, but we can't even begin to control this stuff because health isn't something you can plug into a spreadsheet, so don't talk about it like it is. All right, guys, no need to save any money because something bad might come healthcare-wise, and there's absolutely no actions that you can take to improve your odds of success. That's the end of the financial independence early retirement community. Healthcare is too hard. Bye. No. Yes, I am 33 and relatively that's young, and relatively I am healthy, and that's cool. Do I think that I'm better than others? Nope. I think I'm just younger right now. And, what I mentioned before about Jacob Lund Fisker and me not, me saying that I don't think 175,000 is something that someone should count on going into old age. I stand by that. And I stand by just the general message like, save some money. You're not always going to be young. Someday you're going to be old, you're going to have healthcare costs, and the worst thing is to have health problems and not have the money to ameliorate, and that's probably too nice of a word, to decrease the severity of, decrease the symptoms of those healthcare problems. So, yeah, we want to save some money. We want to prepare for that. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing that we can do over time to look at the new health insurance rules. Buy long-term care insurance when it becomes appropriate, which I believe it's age 62, FYI. If you don't know what long-term care insurance is, good time to pause the video and just Google it so you know what it is. Talk about your backup plans and their limits. If your plan fails, what happened? Do you have contingency plans you can fall back on, like a home you own that you could downsize to free up resources? Do you have family you could move in with if it came to that? Do you have family connections that would let you move to another country with free or inexpensive healthcare? All of this stuff matters because it provides your readers with important context. Saying it's fine to save slightly less than your numbers suggest you should means something different if it comes from a blogger who has a big fat safety net versus one who doesn't. And readers deserve to know your context to assess whether your advice feels right. I don't know. I don't have many contingency plans. I just have a plan, I guess. And kind of contingencies, that will come up when reality shows that one of my facts is wrong. Moving in with family is not really something that I ever consider in my plans. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess we could make up all kinds of scenarios about things that we could try if we fail or if one of our assumptions fails. But it kind of feels like asking the question, what if a unicorn exists? And then answering it 30 different ways. Helpful? Maybe. Guess we'll see if that unicorn comes around. Consider the usefulness of partial numbers. There is no need to share your actual numbers if you're honest with readers about your general financial situation, particularly on questions like whether you have or had student debt, the range of what you earned, and whether you've had any windfalls that have sped your progress. What about things that are the opposite of windfalls? What about big spending mistakes? But if you don't share all your numbers, consider whether it's useful to share any of them. Okay, well, if you're a financial blogger and you're not sharing any numbers, I don't think anyone's going to believe you. A popular metric to share is savings percentage, and there was a time when I shared ours too, but if you don't specify the of what answer, the percentage itself will shame some of your readers into feeling that what they're saving is a fail, and it will tell others that you must have such a crazy high income to save that percentage, and therefore you can't possibly be talking to them. Better metrics to share are those that could truly apply to everyone's situation, like progress percentage towards your goal. That seems way too fuzzy to me. Or simply facts like whether you reached your financial savings targets or not. Info like that keeps you accountable on your journey without the unintended side effects. Again, I think if somebody feels shame, that's a deal they have to work on. I'm not going to be able to prevent anybody listening to me from feeling shame if they're not getting the outcome that I'm getting right now. I think if you're listening to me, you have to think about what's your age. You have to think about whether you intentionally went into college thinking about earning a certain amount of money, whether you research that amount of money. And I think that you have to look at your location, you have to look at your job title, but I wouldn't feel shame about any of it. I would just say, where am I, and where do I want to be, and who has a resume that would track from where I am to where I want to be, and what did they do? I'd just be curious. I wouldn't feel shame. I would feel curiosity. Curiosity is key to moving yourself forward. And it's a good thing to meditate on, I think, is just what should I be curious about right now? Keep yourself educated about financial realities. Very few financially independent, retired early bloggers are trained financial experts, and that's fine. Well, a lot of the trained financial experts are actually just really good at ripping you off. Sharing real-world examples of the FIRE journey is absolutely inspiring to a great many folks, but if you opt to write a blog about a financial topic, you have the responsibility to stay in touch, or maybe get in touch in the first place, with the financial realities for most people, including those who might be very different from you socioeconomically. I do not believe this. And the reason why I don't believe this is because I see two very distinct sections of the financial literacy community, if you want to call it that. I see early retirement bloggers who typically target people with incomes over $100,000, and that's a perfectly fine thing to do. And it's a niche market, obviously, because there are not that many people relatively who make over $100,000. And then there is the kind of Dave Ramsey, get out of debt, don't be completely financially hosed type of person. And certainly they speak to a wider audience than the FIRE community, but they also speak to an audience that maybe has less options and maybe has less passion around the topic of finances. And it's fine that there are those two communities. Obviously, if you are a financial independence early retirement blogger and you are targeting truck drivers, you're like, I am the truck driver financial independence expert, that's going to be a tough sell for sure. And that's likely not a market that you should go into, and it's not one that you're going to find a lot of excitement around. But the general financial education community, you're selling a reward that is at least 30 years away for your audience, and your audience hasn't shown that much interest in earning kind of by definition, because kind of by definition, you're looking at people who are at less than, I don't know, $60,000 a year. So if you're looking at that group, you're looking at a group where the value of money, or of earning a lot of money, isn't as high a priority to many of them. Or maybe they're already just jaded because they grew up in a place where most of the people around them did not earn that much money. And I gotta say, guys, this is a tough problem. And I've been thinking about that income video recently. Straight up, it is a really tough thing to be successful and then to talk with someone who makes a fraction of your income and not sound like an asshole if they've already decided that you sound like an asshole. I don't have a solution to it yet. I want one because I want to help people move forward, but it's just a hard discussion because, a lot of times if I'm talking to somebody who makes a fraction of my income, I know in my head that I guess they got 5 or 10 years of education ahead of them. And I also know that they're probably not going to go after it. Especially if, when they talk to me, they're not like, yes, I want to do this. Oh, I want to do this. There's very few people who come at me like that. I love them, and I will spend forever helping them if that's their attitude. But most people feel pretty defeated, and it's hard for someone on YouTube to make that kind of change in somebody else's life, especially if I'm just someone they don't even know. All right, let's keep going. If you don't know anyone who couldn't come up with $400 out of savings in an emergency, an attribute that describes half the country, or if you read those income figures above and thought, really? That's a big sign that you have some work to do to get grounded in what most people are up against. The more that you reflect that reality in your writing, the better your blogs will be, and the better it will serve your readers. Let's go see what this title says. What financially independent retired early bloggers owe readers? I gotta say, if your blog focus is financial independence / early retirement, and you are trying to cater to people with low incomes, I think that you're just targeting the wrong audience. Now, if your blog is about earning more money and you're targeting people with lower incomes, great. But I think there's just a mismatch there, and I don't believe that an early retirement blogger is going to be more successful by taking into account readers with low incomes. I think that there's just two different things going on there, and that's fine. That's okay. It's perfectly okay if the world has bloggers that focus on increasing income, and then a separate set of bloggers who target high-income people to retire early. That's completely fine. The point is not that every blogger should target every person. The point is that we just need the right person for where you are right now, whoever that is. For some people, the right person for them right now is Dave Ramsey, get out of debt. For other people, the right person for them is Mr. Money Mustache. For other people, they want to spend even less than Mr. Money Mustache, and the right person is Early Retirement Extreme. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that, and there's no reason why every blogger needs to serve every person. Your turn. Obviously, I have strong feelings, but I'd love to know yours for non-bloggers. What do you wish bloggers would universally do more or less of? I don't care if they universally do anything. I just want each individual blogger to do what they feel good about. Is there anything that would help you in your planning that bloggers aren't generally doing now or are doing and should stop? And for bloggers, what would you add or subtract from this manifesto and why? Anything you take issue with? Let's discuss. Well, I've already discussed it in this video. That's all I need to talk about today. Thank you for joining me on the super long 5-year club, video number 99. Probably one person will get through this video, and that's fine. Have a fabulous evening.